War is peace, hate is love, and the only way to see the truth is through the eyes of the Large Blast podcast. That's right, it's the propaganda episode of the LBP. I'm your host, Stoney, and I'm joined as always by Matt.
Fear ensures loyalty.
And Welshie.
For the greater good.
And we're here today to talk about Warhammer 40,000. You guys know the score. Let's kick things off with hobbies goings on. What's happened? What have we been up to? What's going down hobby-wise? Matt, what have you been up to? I
have just been finishing a little LBP project that I've been working on that will see the light of day in probably maybe a couple of weeks. Much the same, but I have been continuing to sell spare stock on eBay, which has all been quite lucrative. And I just wanted to give a shout out to a gentleman by the name of Matthew, who is from Newcastle University, but is obviously from Brighton, where we record. And he bought my Lizard Man army and picked it up in person rather than leaving it with the postie. And he, a couple of days later, sent me a message and said, are you the Matt on the Large Blast podcast? And I was like, yeah. How do you know? And he just said he didn't actually say how he knows, but he said he really enjoys the podcast and it makes traveling up to Newcastle a bit more bearable. So that was good.
Well, hello, Matt. Matt number one, we'll call you, I think.
Yeah, nice one. What about you, Welshie?
Well, I have been working on an LBP project too, Stoney. I have finished the next model I think you're going to release on our Cults 3D page. So if you guys are sat home with a 3D printer, I've painted the Chaos Lord that you've designed. So I think there'll be some videos regarding that soon, and it'll be up and advertised on all our socials. So
please, bad guy spaceman for legal reasons, but yes, absolutely.
Bad guy spaceman.
It just looks pleasure to paint. A nice, slightly larger scale than a normal spaceman in armor made of mites.
Evil spaceman.
Evil spaceman in purple with gold trim who likes snakes and orgies.
Yeah, sexy.
It's grab it on Cults 3D and keep an eye out for the videos. About you, Stoney, are you designing more fun stuff for the listener?
I've got some more fun stuff coming, got some ideas for some big stuff, and I've started a bunch of stuff, but it's all still a bit nebulous. So it's like, I just want to get something kind of concrete started that I can kind of do fairly quickly as well. And I was looking back. Do you remember the old Chaplin model that I did a while ago?
Yeah.
I sort of reopened that and was just like, this is bobbins. I could do way better than this now.
Do you mean Space Soldier Priest Man?
Space Soldier. Yeah, that's right. Space Priest. He needed a bit of care and attention. So I've got that back open. And I've only been working on it the past 2 evenings, but I've made some pretty decent progress. I'm like, okay, well, Space Marines, I mean, those type of fellas, they're armored guys are quite, if you sort of save the bits of their armor as separate tools that you can pull into your thing, then actually you can bash them together quite quickly. So I was like, just maybe I might start doing a few more of these armored space fellas, but we'll have to see about that, like I say. But I think we're going to try to do some printed models, just like a very, very small run. So if you are interested, and I know that there are a lot of people that have been patiently waiting, I say patiently, they've been commenting on everything saying, I want this one, I want that one. So, it's coming. Now's your chance. It's not, because obviously we can't be like, let's do business in the YouTube comment section. That's not very Alan Sugar of us, is it? I've read his book. I know. It's like we can't be out. He didn't start by replying in the YouTube comments. So if you do want to buy a model, send us an email to largeblastpodcast@gmail.com and we can try to work something out. Obviously, we're doing a very small run at the moment, so just try to bear that in mind. Everything might still be a little bit janky on our end. We're not properly facilitated to do this, but at the same time, if you're a long-time listener, we'd like to reward your patience and try to flog you a model, basically. So get in contact.
It's the news. Wow. It's the chuffing news.
Have you heard? 6s are now 4s.
It's the news.
Gene Stealer Limo's back.
News.
Hold tight, Warhammer Plus subscribers, because there's a new program that's apparently fucking excellent. Angels of Death Origins. Maybe it's time to subscribe. Matt and Welshie, you guys have both been bigging this up. What's it about? What we looking at here?
I think it's about grim dark. Often we ask ourselves, we've probably done it as a random topic about 6 times.
Yeah.
What is grim dark? If you're like a fantasy player that's still managing to listen to us waffle on about 40k and you still don't understand what grim dark means, get on Warhammer Plus and watch Angels of Death Origins. Is that right, Matt? Would you agree?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's really good. It's Stony. It's like a prequel to the 10 episodes of Blood Angels dramatization that we've had. So it's just the continuation of that program. So it goes back in time, and it's about a tech priest character who's in the main story arc. So it's like a prequel to that 10 episode series, and it is very grim, and it's amazing because it shows the Admech for what they are.
She is a no nonsense, cold ass,
no
mechanical
humanity
bitch that she's got her task and she's doing anything to get it. Without, I don't want to give away the main bit of the story, but there's a fantastic bit where a servitor's asked to recover some Imperial Guard, and one of them's injured. And let's just say that person doesn't make it back because it would be illogical for them to do so. And
assistance has been provided.
Okay, baby, it's Las Vegas. Open, get married, buy Elvis, and look at some new model releases. It's new model releases that they've dropped, a load of new stuff, all relatively boring. We've got some silly new Primarch guns that everyone's going mad about. We've got a couple of tanks, a dreadnought that looks just the same as every other dreadnought. What's going on here? What are you guys excited about? We've got some 30k of those hover bikes, haven't we?
That was what got me most excited in the 30k, 40k range. We'll come back to some other stuff in a minute, but the plastic jet bikes is something I've been waiting for ages. I've always hated the bikes on wheels. Pack of 3 plastic jet bikes for the Horus Heresy. Convert them up for my Raven Guard. Yes, please. We've got to talk about the Desolators, though. I know they've been memed to death already, but they are the most stupid Primaris models I've seen. I put these, I don't think they'll make it into a model spotlight, but I would put these in our tier system with the Invader ATV and the Space Marine Playhouse. They are utterly ridiculous.
On one hand, it's just a Space Marine. I've got my model spotlight head on now if I was going to review them, because it's just a Space Marine at the end of the day. So it's only as stupid as a Space Marine could be, but it does have a fucking wacky gun that does look like more of a kit bash than something you'd expect to buy from Games Workshop. It's got this weird kind of lean into realism about it as well, because it's got these little rocket launchers on the top, which do look quite feasible in kind of like a future war game or something, but not 40k, where it should just be a massive shoulder mounted rocket launcher. Shoulder goddamn mounted every fucking time.
Yeah,
Just
I mean, that would have been
launcher.
amazing. That would have been amazing if they were shoulder mounted, like the really old school ones. That would have been great.
I've seen some wonderful memes that just fix it instantly. There's one where all of the guns are scaled down in size very slightly and they look fine. There's some where they've taken the stupid missile launchers stacked on top of the other missile launcher and put them on the backpacks. That looks all right.
Well, are these supposed to be the heavy weapons team, like the Devastator squad?
They are.
Because
Devastators.
that's Primaris Devastators, yeah.
Because that's super upsetting, because these guns, they don't look like fucking long range, like heavy, like they're not a shoulder mounted bazooka that's fucking taking down tanks. It looks like shit ass little like crappy rockets, like a firework launcher that they've strapped on top of their gun for, like, I don't know, like taking out small little things. But this is a Devastator squad. This is bollocks.
And when you read what they do,
what's the main captain guy got?
He's got an even bigger box attached to his other box.
It does. It looks like he's got a fucking golf bag attached onto his fucking.
It does
gun.
Look just like a golf bag. I've seen that people have described them as t-shirt cannons. Yeah, I can see that for sure. The gun on the bottom is no line of sight needed. So you're going to have a gun that doesn't need line of sight that's slung and attached
underneath
directly to a gun that does need line of sight. Like, what's the point? That doesn't make any sense. Put the no line of sight thing facing up, like a mortar on the back. They're just really, and belt fed missiles. Is that a thing that exists? What's the belt for? Why have they got heavy
belt
bolter
for the
belts?
gun underneath the? We're getting a bit like, you need to see the model now, but like, isn't the belt feeding for the gun underneath the rocket launchers.
Yeah, but those are smaller, no line of sight necessary rockets, like little rockets.
Oh, that's rockets. I thought it was
Yeah.
like a Gatling gun kind of shit.
No.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
See what I mean? It makes even less sense.
So we've got new books coming out, new World Eaters Codex, plus another book, and that means new lore has been leaked. We've got some new spicy bits of lore that keep us all like the breadcrumbs into the lion's mouth. Keep us all tuned in to 40k. So what have we got? What's new in the world of 40k lore?
Well, the World Eaters Codex apparently has got some kind of developments on Angron. He's super powerful now. He can't be banished to the warp, which is great because it's going to make you buy the model, because he can also come back to life on the tabletop. So that's all kind of tied in nicely. We might get back to that on our propaganda section. But apparently when he's destroyed, even by like orbital weapons, he just comes back 8 weeks, 8 days and 8 hours later, probably 8 minutes and 8 seconds. Khorne likes to be precise. And he's got some new weapons, which I thought was quite cool. He's got this spine grinder axe that he used the whole Forge World to make, and then he destroyed the whole Forge World with it afterwards, which is
classic.
Excellent. And then the sword is called Samniarius, which has got an angry Slanesh demon trapped inside it, because we know Khorne hates Slanesh.
Oh, that's a nice touch. Yeah.
Anger over sexiness. So I guess the big question going forward with the lore with Angron is he's fighting this planet. Gilliman really doesn't want him to take this new planet. But I guess the thing with World Eaters is that their warbands are all kind of split. So a World Eater is going to come back as one full force. I guess that waits to be seen in the lore. They seem to be a bit kind of divided all over the place. But I guess they want to see their daddy and give him a nice bloody hug.
Oh, have they got new Khorne-specific cultists? Or?
Yeah, they've got a guy called Skull Crusher and the Jackals. Remember the guys that are basically wielding 2 chainswords, one in each hand, with their tops off and big Khorne symbols on them.
Hey, it's been absolutely ages since we saw those models, isn't it? Like, it kind of feels like it's almost surprising that they're not out.
Yeah, it's not surprising that Angron's
over
not
2
out.
months. Yeah.
It's like he's been around forever.
Mental. Yeah,
I feel like that happens more and more with Games Workshop stuff. Like every so often I'll go onto the Games Workshop website and click on the previews thing and be like, well, that was like last year, wasn't it? We were looking at pictures of that.
Yeah, I agree. And then the Vashtor stuff that we all kind of knew was going to happen has basically been confirmed. So he's selling demon engines in return for souls reaped by the demon engines. So basically all of the Chaos Warbands are in debt to him. If you buy a Chaos demon engine, you're basically in debt. Your mortgage repayments have gone up and Vashtor's coming to collect. So he's getting pretty powerful amongst the various chaos gods, and they've confirmed that he will be looking for relics, and he will be looking for a relic on the rock. So if it's not the lion, I think we're all going to be very disappointed. They've also said that there's a secret 5th Arcs of Omen book, even though they said there was only 4 to start with. So whether that is the lion book or not waits to be seen. But
I see part of, like, we were just talking about how long they kind of preview stuff, and then we have to wait for ages for it to come out. Like, I wonder whether that means that the lion isn't there, because if the lion is there, Games Workshop have kept that under like really good lock and key, that they don't seem to be able to keep any other secret. That kind of makes me think it's not happening. It'd be amazing if it is.
Do you know what I mean? Like, no one knew Vashtor was going to come out, and then there's got to be a Primarch. We've said, we've got to stand by our predictions, and we said that the lion was going to come out next, and this is the perfect opportunity. Like, this is literally the lore saying, we're going to the rock. We're going to find I hope a Primarch doesn't show up whilst we're at the rock. We're looking for a guy who knows who that could be. Yeah. Like, all this kind of now's the time. We can't just keep being like Fulgrim all the time. But we need to evolve.
Yeah. Well, there is more and more evidence that there is a loyalist Primarch coming back. Like people have previewed the rule changes and the way that there's I don't know what the keyword is now.
The keyword changed from Gilliman to Imperial Primarch.
The keywords here is Dark Angels. All the signs are pointing. The stars are aligned, Matt. It's time. I
think what's going to happen is he's going to open the vault to the lion's bedroom, and there's going to be a note from Luther that says, "I've got him, you prick. I wasn't a heretic after all." And then we'll have to wait another 6 months for 10.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Kill Team news. And you know, on this show, when we have Kill Team news, we have good news because this new stuff they've done, the inside box sets, Zone Mortalis, Soul Shackle team set box they've got out is really good, apparently. Right, Welshie, you're a Kill Team man now. You're all about Kill Team. Fuck 40k, you said. I don't even know why I'm on a 40k podcast.
Look what it is, Stoney. Look what it is.
Stoney.
Look what
honestly,
it is. Look on
Zone
the box.
Mortalis was years ago, mate.
Look on the box.
You've got to get with the Kill Team. The Kill Team. This is
Who's
Soul
the Kill
Shackle
Team?
Inside the Garadark. It's RBTs versus Dark Eldar. This is an official LBP prediction. Although we did have see silhouettes of the models, but the Arbites, Jesus, they look fucking cool.
They're so chunky. They are like,
They've gone full Judge Dredd. They've got the Proctor. They've got the I think he's not called a Shuriken. He's called something similar to a Shuriken. They've got the guy with the fucking floating like eagle with the speakers in, with the stupid old helmet from the really classic metal models.
Yeah, he's standing with that shotgun in the old school pose, isn't he? A shotgun on his hip, ready to fucking rock and roll.
They've got some dude in a gimp mask with like a spiky baseball bat that just looks like he's gonna really fight. He's like straight out of 2000 AD. It's the coolest Kill Team I've seen. I'm not keen on the dog so much, but the Kill Team is great. They've got some cool Dark Eldar with some new weapons in the box, and the terrain is just even cooler than the previous terrain. It's got breachable walls now, so when you're playing Kill Team, you can like blow holes through the walls and stuff, and you pop the inside out. Just out the ballpark every single time.
Rolling in my 6-4.
So thank you, citizens, for joining us here on your mandated listening to the Large Blast podcast propaganda section. You are very lucky because today we have Professor Matt coming in with his lecture on commissars in the Imperial Guard. Matt, come in here and give your speech to these lovely citizens.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, every Imperial citizen recognizes the distinctive cap and greatcoat of the commissar. Whether from Hablock propaganda, frescoes, or grainy Minotaurum recruitment pics, to the masses of humanity, these men are the symbols of imperial authority. You guys know what a commissar looks like, right?
Absolutely. I see them every night in my dreams and my nightmares.
Your nightmares, yeah. Well, they are universally feared and often hated by those around them. Commissars have the power to summarily execute any trooper or officer found wanting. I've always found commissars very interesting because they're one of the only last vestiges of like the directly real world inspired things in Warhammer. We always talk about things where they've kind of toned it down, and old Warhammer there used to be loads of really obvious puns and stuff in Warhammer, but this is a clear copy essentially of a Soviet communist commissar in the Red Army in the Second World War and prior to the Second World War. And it's quite interesting that it's still in the Imperial Guard. It's still around completely as it has been for as long as I can remember. They're the same characters, and it's great that they haven't been toned down. So it's a real world influence. And
even so much so, sorry, Matt, the anniversary models they released today has a new version of an old commissar model, literally in the middle of summary executing somebody.
And weirdly timing, because we'd kind of selected this episode and then they released the model, which is really weird, a really weird coincidence. So many people know that they are there to ensure not only the loyalty to the regime, so to the imperial regime, but more importantly perhaps, that they're there to make sure that they agree with the commanding officer. Essentially, it's like a check, like an imperial check to check that the actions of the commanding officer, that they're happy with them. So it's not necessarily like we always like to think that a commissar would say like no retreat or something like that, but it isn't necessarily like that. It's if retreating is beneficial for the Imperium, then they would allow an officer to do a retreat. But if they were trying to retreat because they were breaking or the morale was failing, then that's when the commissar would tap the officer on the shoulder and shoot him in the head. I was flicking through some really old books yesterday, some old Imperial Guard codexes, and there's some great stories of how the guardsmen would suddenly become very loyal if they were covered in the brain matter of their superior officer who was shot. Don't quite know how that works, but it does in 40k setting.
I feel like it's just a conveyor belt of Imperial Guards guys. You might start the day as the private, and by the end of the day, so many people have been shot in the head. You're suddenly the commissar. You're like, fuck, I've got to do everything right. Immediately, like Brickett trying to fight some gene stealers, and then you're shot in the head, and the guy you were training gets put up.
There's a great bit in the Gaunt's, which we'll talk about Gaunt, but in the book I'm reading at the moment with Commissar Hark, where he doesn't discipline a linesman for kind of running away, and the guy that's kind of watching him is like, oh, I thought you were going to kind of kill that guy, and he was like, no, it wasn't his fault. And then later in the day he calls in the commanding officer and shoots the commanding officer in the head. He's like, it was his fault. I'm not going to blame every line trooper if their instruction is poor.
Exactly.
Yeah. If there's a cock up, by the end of the day, someone's getting shot in the head.
I mean, they are so there's such a core element of the guard, I guess, is why they're still around. You couldn't take them out of 40k. They're so perfect for the setting. Their role within the law is to ensure that the troops under their watch stick to the line of the emperor. So they stick to the imperial creed in war and in peace, if you can call being in 40k peace. So they ensure that the Imperium's way of doing things is upheld, and they have a check to make sure that the wrong commands aren't followed out. But their origins, as most things in 40k do, the origin goes right back to the Horus heresy, where veterans in the Imperial army would become discipline masters, which is like a proto commissar, to maintain the discipline and the belief in the imperial cult. Sorry, the imperial truth, not the imperial cult. And it's somewhat ironic that in 30k, the proto commissars would shoot someone for believing in the imperial cult, and now in 40k, the commissars shoot anyone that doesn't believe in the imperial cult. So their role over 10,000 years has slightly changed. The commissars themselves are high-ranking officers of the Departamento Militarum, but they always lead by example. So they're not like desk-bound officers. They're there because they're good at what they do, and they know that really fear only kind of leads the men so far, and to lead men to true victory, they have to lead from the front, lead by example. And we mentioned Gaunt and Hark. There's loads of commissar characters. They've released loads of and what's that? I don't even. Seria Rain, the female commissar model, which is a great model that we've posted on our social media.
Cassius Kane.
Yeah, Kane is a really interesting one, and of course Yarick. So like a bedrock. I mean, they're more than Imperial commanders. They're like a bedrock of Black Library, a real cornerstone.
I mean, there's so much, like the basis of so much Black Library. I'm listening to, I think it must be the 8th or 9th Gaunt's Ghosts novel at the moment. In fact, I've caught up with the audiobook recording now. And they're just, I know it's Dan Abnett, and I know I always go on about how fucking great he is. But to be 9 books in to a series essentially focused around one character, Abraham Gaunt, there's some other people, just shows you the depth of these people as characters for a model that is 3 wounds and fairly easy to kill on the board. Has such depth of lore and feeling and emotion behind it that you can get an 8-book series of that, and then you can do a completely different kind of comedy parody-esque Cassius Kane series as well. It's mad.
I mean, I think particularly in the Black Library stuff, they're the closest thing we have to like a recognizable human protagonist, really, aren't they, for a lot of these
exactly. And then even more relatable than even characters like Eisenhorn, right? I mean, these guys aren't investigating weird magic shit. They don't have psychic powers, they're just heroic blokes.
I mean, they are kind of everywhere. But as we're talking about, or we mentioned Gaunt's interesting because his rank isn't just a commissar. So he's through various reasons he's inherited the rank of colonel because he's in charge of a regiment. So he has like a dual command, which other commissars, nothing comes to mind, but other commissars have had dual ranks. And probably in the Navy, if like a commissar shoots an admiral, maybe they'll become like admiral commissar, just bolt on whatever rank you want. But and some of them become lord commissars. Yarrick was a lord commissar, and I think at one point Yarrick shoots, or he takes over one of the Steel Legion regiments, and he kind of runs that for a bit in Armageddon, the Battle for Armageddon. Generally, it's kind of written that there's one commissar at least for every regiment. That's what they aim for, one commissar per ship, per Navy ship. And to denote their rank, we've already mentioned the distinctive uniform, which is the thing that makes them so distinctive and stand out with the rest of the guard, especially the hats. The hats have always been spectacular. Some of the models have been brilliant for the commissar models, but they're not
I'm
necessarily...
a big fan of the sash. The sash is really what sets it off for me.
Oh, I like the cap, but they become the cream of the crop, but they don't necessarily start out life as the cream of the crop necessarily, but they all go to the Solar Progenium, which is like a cadet school spread across the galaxy. And it's where I think stormtroopers go. So I think a lot of them are orphans, but they can also be people from military families that get sent to the Solar Progenium when they're children. And there's just like a cadet school, and particularly faithful girls might end up in the Sisters of Battle. But the hardest ones, the best ones, the best will go to become commissars. And I think they end up in like small units of trainee commissars, like there'd be 10 of them, like junior commissars led by a commissar. So some of them will turn up at your training base. And I was reading about how if any of the trainee commissars were kind of failing at their training, that they'd set them free into the assault course, and then the rest of the class would have to like chase them to kill them. Just kind of dark stuff. Yeah, there's some dark stuff with their training, but once they, I don't know what the word is, once they graduate, they then will ship out to join a regiment that they've probably never heard of, to a planet that they've never heard of. And that's I mean, I guess this is why there's a lot of Black Library stuff written about them, because they're interesting characters in the way that they have their whole upbringing is completely separate to where they end up in. So they go to a regiment that has its own traditions, and they have to learn those traditions, respect those traditions, become respected by the men, lead the men well, lead the men from the front, whilst also being sometimes politician. And
well, I mean,
and
take Gaunt as an example. Like, he made in a school, lovely life, looked after by a kind of father figure that trained him. Yeah. Goes to pick up, I'm off to get my regiment, arrives where he's picking up his regiment, and their entire planet's being destroyed.
Yeah.
He picks up, I don't know how many men he gets, 100 men, saves them from their planet being destroyed, and they spend the next like 3 years having a go at him for not letting them fight to the death on their planet. It's like rescue them.
Yeah.
And then he has to fit in and get to their like weird customs of living in forests and fighting with straight silver, and adapt to their strange selection of Irish and Scottish accents read by Toby Longworth. You know, it's difficult.
Yeah.
That must be quite a culture shift to go from climbing the career ladder to taking a shit in the woods every time he needs to go for
basically.
Yes, I guess they just, that makes them more interesting than being like an Imperial Army hobnob officer with a monocle.
Is there such a thing as an Imperial Army hobnob with a monocle? Are there people that just get rushed through the
Brown Hitler
officers'
model.
Schools? That's Brown Hitler, or do they not all just? Do they all have to cut their teeth as an Imperial Guardsman in some form or another?
No. They don't. They go to. I think there's probably some commanders that will rise up through the ranks, but I think there's a lot of them that will. They go to cadet school, and I mean. It's quite interesting reading about the new history they've made up for the new Lord Solar, he's from a military family. He spent 100 years leading armies across the Segmentum Solar, and he's been he was at cadet school for like a whole lifetime. Essentially, he's just like a lot of these high-ranking officers, even today, you don't start at the bottom.
There's definitely a difference in regiments, isn't there, in terms of how posh they are. Like, there's instances where commissars come up to kind of punish. The one I'm thinking of is not a Volpone blue blood, but there's your posh regiments and your posh guard troops where people think they're the bee's knees, and then the commissar comes in and has to do some discipline, and that doesn't go too well. But the commissar always wins. So
yeah. There was a really good separated short story in A Couple of White Dwarfs where, like a few months ago, where this regiment is in a starship and they start worshipping the Blood Emperor. It's their slow turning to chaos as they start worshipping blood, but they're still kind of loyal until the moment when they're not loyal, and they don't even notice that they fall into chaos, which is quite interesting on its own.
They've got the taint.
But the bit where the commissar is like walking with the commanding officer, and the commissar is like suspicious. It's written from the point of view of the commander, so the guy that's fallen into chaos. The commissar he unclips his holster, he's walking alongside him, and the commander's able to kill the commissar.
I know the stories you mean. It's the one where they start like they're fighting, and then they start being like, oh, isn't the sound of the blood great? And then they're using blood as camouflage paint. And they're like, oh, it's worked so well. I'm just like rubbing all this blood over my face. And you're like, I think this is going downhill fast.
So they're all kind of trying to still find bad excuses to rub themselves with blood. They're like, oh, I've heard that I've really got really bad acne, and I hear that if you rub your face with blood, that it gets rid of the acne. So I'm just going to rub my face with blood. I've got to squeeze into my new leather trousers, quickly lube my legs up with blood.
On the tabletop though as well, so we've sort of touched on the models a little bit, but the models are some of the classic 40k models. And the thing that's always been quite fun, as someone that's always had or always played with the Guard, the rules have always been very similar. So the classic one is, if you have a psyker near you and they perils, the commissar shoots them, so you stop the perils. At some points during various Guard codexes, there's been rules where if they're in a command squad and that unit or a unit near them fails, they'll shoot one person, so you have one person dies.
It's like to pass the morale test, right? Execution. Yeah.
But the one I've always loved, and it's one I've never had to use in the game, and it's not there anymore, is the rule that Ogrins used to have. I'm pretty sure they don't have it now, where Ogrins would never get into a Chimera.
It's too dark in there. Is that what that was called?
It's dark in there. Yeah. So if a commissar was near them, the commissar would be able to force them into the Chimera. But if there wasn't a commissar, they wouldn't get in the Chimera.
He's got his commissar issued nightlight with him. He goes and plugs in his side.
Sings them a lullaby.
Yeah. But yeah, as we've said, kind of in reality, they're not really there to shoot everyone, because if you go in and shoot everyone, then you're probably going to end up getting shot yourself. So they're kind of a weird mix of upholding discipline whilst also maybe making the right choices. So it's
that old thing, the carrot and the gun, isn't it? That old
that old chestnut.
They're not so much propaganda themselves, are they?
No,
they ensure that people remain in the thralls of the propaganda.
They're the iron fist of the propaganda.
Yeah.
It's like you've already been duped by the propaganda at the point where you're in their army, but then the only thing that's going to keep you going is more propaganda, and they're there to make sure that you're loaded up. The fire is stoked full of plenty of righteous propaganda.
That's exactly it. I mean, I've as I started writing or thinking about this yesterday, and I started to think they're not really the vessels of propaganda. But then as I was flicking through the Guard codexes, I realized, specifically in the Guard, but then it kind of made me think more broadly, who actually is the vessels of propaganda. So if we look in detail at the Guard and the Guard Codex, the person there for propaganda is the preacher, and they still have there's always been preachers in the Guard Codex, and there still is preachers, but the preacher models, even in the new codex, the pictures of the preacher models are from the Demon Hunters Codex from 2003.
So
why is there no preacher? I mean, it's so
there's
40k, the preachers.
There's one, Thaddeus from Blackstone Fortress.
Oh yeah. Well, he kind of is a confessor, which can you remember the old confessor models were amazing.
Yeah.
So good. And the preachers are really the vessels of imperial propaganda in the Guard. They help on the tabletop. People used to use them in blobs of conscripts in the last codex, where you get like +2 attacks on 50 conscripts charging in. But then that kind of made me think more broadly how really the agents of propaganda in the Imperium is the ecclesiarchy, is the church, and they don't have models in 40k necessarily, but they're the local vicar in your local church.
That's kind of what I wanted to touch on, just taking it all the way back to 30k, is that and you kind of alluded to this with the role of the commissar changing, that there's always been a kind of one big driving message throughout the Imperium, and in the 30k at the start, when the Great Crusade was happening, it's the imperial truth. Science is the way, religion is wrong, the emperor is not a god. And then obviously it all goes to shit and it changes. The Lectitio Divinitatis starts, the imperial cult starts up. But that was the initial propaganda engine, was the emperor's way is correct, and then it became the emperor is a god. And that message was delivered by remembrancers and orators and imagists, and that's kind of the viewpoint of at least half of the Black Library novels, is from the viewpoint of essentially the propaganda artists, the remembrancers, the journalists, the speech makers, the photographers that are sent out on these crusades. It is a story of propaganda, the Horus Heresy. And then when the split happens, it's everyone goes their own way to find their best representatives. And I think I mentioned it before, but it links in really nice with this. The latest Primarch book, Chris Wright's Sanguinius, is an entire story about a remembrancer that finds out the secrets of the Blood Angels and wants to bring it to the light, a kind of journalist that wants to let everybody know that actually underneath all of the gold and shiny and flowing golden locks, they're drinking people's blood. There's a dark side to these guys. Yeah. And then the kind of back half of the book is them, Sanguinius the whole time is like, everybody must know you're allowed to release whatever you want, whereas most of the remembrances, like Perturabo's guy isn't allowed in his office, he's not allowed anything. Sanguinius is like, tell everybody everything, it'll all be fine. But he finds out all these horrible secrets and he writes it and he publishes it. And the kind of post-credits scene of the book is someone going around and burning all of his books out of existence so everyone can hold Sanguinius up as the perfect angel. And it's a real tale of that Horus Heresy propaganda.
For 30 years, I have plotted to bring down the party. I was sick in mind and body. Together with my colleagues, Aronson and Rodi,
Thought crime is death. Thought crime does not entail death. Thought crime is death. I have committed, even before setting pen to paper, the essential crime that contains all others in itself.
So, if there's one thing that we know in our current day about propaganda, it's that it needs to be advertised, right? On TV, on the radio, and all the rest of it. And what if I told you guys that Games Workshop had done adverts before, like TV adverts, not for Hero Quest or Space Crusade? What if I told you guys? Obviously, in America, things are a little bit different than they are over here, and they've got it's like a franchise. Games Workshop, you can have a franchise for a store over there, kind of thing. And I had found a particularly cool Games Workshop advert from America.
These days, kids are virtually glued to a TV screen. It just doesn't have to be that way. Get into Games Workshop today and discover a world of interaction and creativity. At Games Workshop, you collect, paint, and build figures and scenes for face-to-face tabletop strategic battles. It's social, it's creative, and it's fun. Stop by the Games Workshop at Sugarland Crossing and receive a free Battle for McCraig paint set today. This offer ends soon. Don't delay. Games Workshop. Collect, paint, and play.
Oh my God.
Oh.
That is incredible.
Yes, so Games Workshop, that was a real shock to me. I'd seen the classic Hero Quest 1, things like that, but I'd never seen an actual advert for a Games Workshop store. So I was like, okay, this is really cool. And I'm thinking maybe the Games Workshop need to bring back, we need to get some propaganda out there, some Games Workshop propaganda, because let's face it, we're preaching to the choir here on the 40K podcast that people get to listen to who love 40K. We need to get Games Workshop out there. We need to make a TV ad for Games Workshop. What do you guys say?
Yeah,
I completely
definitely
agree. And there's some serious propaganda in there. If you're just listening to this in Spotify, what you won't have picked up on that propaganda that I would have done as a 12-year-old boy, I reckon, was roughly when that was released. And that is that there was probably more than 50% girls playing Warhammer in that Games Workshop. And that's just not real. I went to Warhammer World recently, and there was about 70 people in there, and I couldn't see a single female. So that is propaganda right there.
No one gave them a wedgie outside the store. No one kicked them in the nuts, called them rubbish. It's very unrealistic, but at the same time, it's propaganda, and that's what we need. So I'm thinking, first thing we need to do is we need to come up with some kind of mascot for 40K, because let's face it, at the moment the mascot for 40K is just Ultramarines. I guess you could say it's arguably Guilliman or something like that, because he's the Primarch of the Ultramarines. So we need to either get an existing character from 40K or do a kind of a classic kind of, oh, my name is Painty, the 40K paintbrush, and I'm the mascot for 40K. So what do we reckon?
Death Corps of Krieg Commissar. Or is that not the feel? not the feel we're going for?
Yeah, how grimdark do we? I mean, you could have Games Workshop bring back the plushie squig. I'm still waiting for my plushie squig.
I was going to go plushie nurgling again. I think
yes,
the grandfather has definitely got something.
Nurgling.
Yeah,
big sloppy Father Christmas, big sloppy grandfather Christmas Nurgle boy. Come.
Yeah, I think a big Nurgling could. That's got a bit of kind of like Minions-esque kids appeal to it.
They are 90s proper Minions, aren't they?
A very 90s thing would be to have like a pink horror walk up and find like, I'm combining this now with like a John Lewis advert, but I'm thinking crying kid. His friends are all inside playing computer games, but he doesn't like computer games. So a pink horror walks up to him and he's like, but I don't have any friends to play Warhammer with. And the pink horror bursts into the blue horrors that burst into the brimstone. And he's like, well, we've got plenty to go around. And they all skip into a Games Workshop together.
Oh, that'd be kind of nice.
I think that'd work well. You could have a series of them. You could do the same with Nurglings. Doesn't quite work with Khorne Bloodhounds.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Or Demonettes.
Could there be like a Lassie style program? If we're branching out into programming, could we make a Lassie style program with the Bloodhound? Or, like Scooby-Doo or something, where they show up but they're always the murderer, but it turns out it was the Bloodhound they brought along with them and just mauled someone to death.
Yeah.
Now I'm just thinking of like kids' TV shows completely not related to adverts. I'm thinking of like a really shit version of Brum, where the Invader ATV keeps coming back and everyone's like, fuck off, we don't want to go on an adventure with you. You're a rubbish car.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, kids' TV shows played a large part in like shifting merchandise, didn't it? That's all kind of kid propaganda. We've got to get you've got to get them young. That's what I'm talking about. We've got to get these kids young. Maybe we could. Is there anything we could kind of anthropomorphize or anything? Because it's always good to have like a talking squig, or like we say a Nurgling or something. Is there a dog or a cat? There's that weird cat thing.
There's that weird cat thing from the Eldar.
The Eldar
we don't want
thing,
kids getting
we
into
don't want
Eldar. What a way
to
to bore people.
All right, fair play.
I mean, what is our target audience? If our target audience like 16-year-old boys, then we want to get the demonettes in the advert, surely, or
Oh, okay.
They've got to be like 12, haven't they? 12-year-olds. That's when Games Workshop needs to get them in.
We've got to get them all. We've got every age
4
range.
years
We've got
of
to get them
investment.
all, from old to young. We've got to, get them in. So
what about
everyone.
some kind of scene with like a younger sister playing with a doll, and then a boy like Sid in Toy Story takes the doll and turns it into like a cherub, and then someone comes and taps her on the shoulder and is like, if you like that style, you're going to love the Grim Dark.
Yeah. It's like one of those things where it keeps cutting back to him in the past, stealing the doll from from his sister, to him in present day, like stuffing a dead baby full of electrodes.
We're going for different ages, but like you could have a friendly servo skull, or what about like a kind of like a friendly servitor? Like a servitor that's like not like doesn't, it's like
He's got like a smile like nailed into his face.
Yeah. I'm your friendly servitor.
I think there's loads of ideas there. I think they should hire us for whatever this franchise is.
Well, we need to find it. We need to get a mascot sorted. We need to get one down and on the board. So, what we're going to have. I don't know. Could we have like? What about something? What about like a dice, a talking dice with a fucking gas mask on for the Krieg gas mask?
I was just thinking about that.
Gretchens.
Gretchen is cool.
Gretchens. They're fun. They're lovable. They can be good. They can be bad. They're going to help you with your science homework.
What's that? The monkey thing.
Oh,
Jacaro.
Jacaro's perfect, actually.
Yeah.
But it's such a small part of the lore, but they're not going to know that. They're just going to see a monkey and they're going to come into the shop and the monkey's going to make them spend loads of money.
Oh, the other thing I was just thinking was that, the Cotiaz that's got that eagle on his
cyber
head,
eagle.
Kind of cyber eagle. What about like a cyber creature that's like
the cyber monkey? Arkan got a cyber monkey, a simiate.
Oh yeah, he does.
A simiate.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
A sassy talking monkey, or like that would be kind of good. Or a sassy talking sidekick of any description is always. So
it's not quite Grimdark Servitor, because it's not a human that's been lobotomized.
Yeah.
but it's an animal that has been lobotomized. Yeah. And
okay, cool.
Yeah. And then
so
you could tie in other characters around that, like the Inquisitor,
the lobotomist. He's like, it's me, the crazy lobotomist.
Yeah. Be careful next time you go to the dentist. Yeah.
Be kind of a build a kind of a compare the meerkat style lore around them.
Yes. Yeah. That's great. Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got our mascot sorted. Then we'll pick this back up in a second. So everything from the greater good to go and have a look in that sneaky guy's suspiciously gene stealery looking shed. It's alien propaganda. Well, we all know that you're the Xenos man on the show. What have you found out for us about Xenos propagandas?
Well, the first thing I found out from my research is I still hate Tau. And every time we have to do Xenos, I have to go away and I have to research Tau, and I'm never going to forgive you guys. But I've got to say,
you have a Tau army. Every time I've got to say, you have
orcs.
A Tau army.
They're orcs. You can't deny that the Tau are excellent propagandists. To the point where they're not only propaganda for other Tau, but their propaganda is so successful that they have important and vast auxiliaries, components that are entirely different species, and like not just they're slightly pink looking Tau, they're completely different species. So obviously their message is getting across and they do deliver something. So I guess we need to have a chat about the greater good.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is it's very nebulous, isn't it? The greater good. I think it's funny when I was thinking back to this and like talking to Gav all those years ago. I don't know if you guys remember, we were saying, are there any good Tau or something like this? And he was like, no, not anymore. There was something like that anyway. But and that kind of made me think that like maybe the Tau their initial idea was to be kind of like some good guys essentially in in 40k, but now it's all become whatever this greater good is, which is a nebulous kind of secret, is actually some kind of shady's goings on. Welshie, as the LBP Tau player who loves the Tau so much, what is the what is the greater good in the lore?
So the greater good is essentially communism, all working together for the greater good and benefit and happiness of everyone, and that will be delivered and driven by endless technological evolution. So it's like the concept of communism, but with technology and technological progression being the main focus, rather than going back to splitting fields into individual allotments and everyone sharing potatoes. They
so
seem
like
to offer
kickbacks go to developing more technology rather than to corrupt politicians.
Yeah, technology will save us, and technology drives us all. And you don't need to worry about the ethereals and the fact that when they ask you to kill yourself, you just do, because there's nothing creepy going on at all. And we've got really good posters. And look at these crew, they seem happy. And look at these Vespid Stingwings, they don't seem happy. They seem like they need new models that they haven't had for 20 years. But yeah, I guess that's it. It's and what would be appealing as a human auxiliary, I suppose, would be everything seems rosy in Tauland. You know, in the center of the sphere expansions, as they call them.
It's also that kind of
seems great.
It's also that they show up, they've got all this cool technology. If you were from like a feral world on the edge of the empire or something and they showed up, maybe you could be tricked into like joining the Tau. It's that kind of like it's like the hand that washes itself, isn't it? Because their whole propaganda revolves around their technology, and then so people get involved because they see them show up doing all shock and awe, you know, looking all cool shooting laser guns, so they join, and then they look all cool shooting laser guns, whole thing, right?
I think they just kind of tell planets that if you join us, you don't have to pay the imperial tithe. You don't have to join the guard regiments. Your children won't be part of the imperial tithe. You can trade with us like you're already trading with us in secret, but now we can do it officially, and you'll be better off. We'll make you richer because you don't have to pay the tithe. No taxes with the Tau.
Tax free. But
it's also like we were saying before, like if you don't get no choice over to what you join, if you're like, oh, I grew up on this imperial world where the only thing I can join is the shitty word bearers or something, you might be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm joining the Tau.
And like all good propaganda, I suppose we alluded to it there as a joke, but there's something being covered up here. There's some issues, I would say, with Tau society. It is a complete caste-based system, literally caste, but caste with an E, which I don't think is how you spell caste, but it might be.
I think it is.
You ever end up in the fire caste, fighting on feet. You're in the air caste, flying the planes. There's probably some other castes that I don't know about because fuck Tau. More than the doesn't seem like much social mobilization. You seem to be what you're born into if you're a Tau in the Tau Empire.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about the commissars potentially being orphans, and they're like the dregs of society. Can be, if they're the best of the best, they go to the Scholar Progonium. They could end up being a Lord Commissar. They could end up being Yarick.
Yeah,
but not for the Tau.
Not for the Tau. But then maybe the Tau propaganda isn't for the Tau, is it? The Tau propaganda is for the auxiliaries, because you've got this weird thing with the ethereals where the Tau are just going to do what they are told anyway by the ethereals because they just do. And it's got nothing to do with the warp, apparently, according to every source that you can find. But for some reason, the ethereals have this hold over other Tau. And I did find a little bit about this, and I got more interested because it took me to another Xenos species, so I didn't have to be reading about Tau. But it took me to the Qual, which I think when Stoney, you talked about way back when we did rare Xenos, who are like weird ants, like ant spider species. And it said that there's these, they use these mind worms that infect psychers and basically make them into puppets. So they were saying on the Tau boards that I was reading that the ethereals have got slightly smaller hole in their head and the organ in their head hole is different to the other Tau, and apparently it's biologically quite similar to the mind grub of the call. So there we are. We've mentioned the auxiliaries in that little bit of Tau propaganda, and I thought there was quite a good little story that links to another Xenos race, this Peck raid that the Dark Eldar did. So apparently the Dark Eldar found out that the crew are able to essentially eat brains and kind of evolve parts of the organism they're eating and learn memories and learn tactics and that kind of stuff. And obviously the homunculi wanted to get a little bit of that in the Dark Eldar cocktail. So there was this massive Dark Eldar raid on a Kroot homeworld, and they essentially called in the Tau, and the Tau came and mopped up most of the Dark Eldar before the Dark Eldar managed to get some corpses off the planet. But essentially, they called in the Tau, and the Tau came and saved the Kroot planet. And you kind of see that's why, if you're a small race like the Kroot that can't defend yourself against master races, having that ability is probably quite, understandable that you might join.
If you listen to the Tau episode, the Kroot are saved by the Tau. But the orcs are about to wipe them out. Yeah. And the Tau turn up. Yeah. I mean, it's little country, big country, isn't it? It's real
made me think about the Dark Eldar propaganda. And I thought about looking into that a bit more. And then I thought, that's basically the Dark Eldar propaganda, right? If you hear about this Peck raid, if you think breaking into a planet from the webway, hurling off a load of corpses, chopping them up and trying to put their organs inside you, if that sounds like your cup of tea, join the Dark Eldar. They don't really need any kind of
there's a very clear-cut definition between the Eldar and the Dark Eldar, and I feel like you kind of know what side of the line you're on pretty fast, So
exactly. And we spoke to Steve Conlin, aka James Workshop, about this on our last episode. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and have a listen. And he basically made the same point. If Dark Eldar, if you're into the sex parties and the chopping up people and the pleasure for pain, that's where you're going to be. So you don't really need to advertise. So then I looked at Eldar and I got bored. So their propaganda's rubbish, I decided. And I thought, who are one of the biggest masters of propaganda? And that's the Catan. Because is there anyone else you can think of in 40k other than maybe Chaos Gods that convince an entire race, the Necrontyr, to literally give up their souls?
You're right. They Jim Jonesed it. They did an intergalactic Jim Jonesing.
Those Necrontyr were drinking that Kool-Aid to beat those old ones, that's for sure. And it wasn't until they did that they realized they'd sold literally their life force and souls to do it. I think Catan, stars of propaganda, literally stars. I mean, obviously it doesn't work out well for them. They get shattered into a million pieces, but they did a good job.
But there's all of the long-term interesting kind of tie-in rumors with how that has affected the Imperium, especially like the cult mech, the admech.
Yeah, the
that
Void
we mentioned.
Dragon.
We're not mentioning this episode directly, but I mean that the power of the Catan propaganda could well be still turning its cogs and influencing half of humanity.
So Catan propaganda is probably a pretty big force in the universe. But I think beyond all of that and beyond all of this, your chaplains, your commissars, your Imperial Infantryman handbook, your communist Tau posters, your star gods, there is a winner of propaganda. And it's propaganda that doesn't need a poster or a speech. It requires one gene stealer stowing away on a ship, landing on a planet, and infecting somebody to the point where that planet becomes entirely controlled by the gene stealer cults. That, I think, is the winner of propaganda.
But then, is that propaganda? Do you know what I mean? Like, surely the posters and all of that stuff is the propaganda. It's the lies that you spin around. Like, do people...
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Stoney, because by the time you've got a couple of generations in and your third arms have disappeared and you've got a slightly smoother head, you're starting to put up posters to increase the speed at which the cult is growing on the planet. So, like you said, I think in the intro, you might get lured into what you think is an imperial church by a kind of dodgy priest, and it turns out, there's some gene stealer seed inside you.
Like, hey, come, buy my pies or whatever. What's that? There's demons in the pies. There's alien worms in the pies. Whatever. They get out there and get involved. They're like the Jehovah's Witnesses of propaganda.
Oh, for sure. Like the Kellamorph model, that's like his whole thing. The kind of my favorite gene stealer cult model, your gun slinging cowboy 3-armed Kellamorph. His whole like backstory is he's this gene stealer hero, but no one knows he's a gene stealer. He's just this crazy hero that turns up when you need him, and that is propaganda. The hero on the war poster that's just or the hero in the Second World War film that's just gunned down like 30 of the opposition. So I think they do it genetically, they're doing it biologically, societally, and even planetarily. I think they've got to be the winners.
Like a guy who it can kind of occur. He's not really like a named character. It's just like a Kellamorph can come along, like a kind of like a John Wayne, or
once in a generation.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And then you've got the other models like the Clammiverse, who's got all the speaker staff, and he's literally just blaring out messages.
Oh yeah, that's DJ Alien Man. Everyone knows him. He's doing the old scratching on one hand with a speaker on the other side.
Yeah,
blasting the tunes out.
So yeah, I think there's a few good contenders there, and all propaganda in very different ways. I mean, I didn't include orcs because only orcs join orcs, but then I did think maybe you've got the digger knobs, go back to Gorka Morka.
Or the humans.
You had those humans that used to just love driving fast and be slaves to the orcs.
Might also just be kind of indentured servitude.
Yes, I think that might be slavery. Propaganda. Yeah, fair.
The 70s,
the 80s, the 90s.
Oh, we're going back in time. Is that a space squad? It's time we take you back with a blast from the past.
Blast from the past, and this time we've got something very cool, very special. Codex City Fights. Matt, this is one of yours. This is an awesome book that came out about fighting in cities.
That is right. Yeah, something a little different. It's not a model, it's a book. It is one of the best books ever compiled by Games Workshop. It's Codex City Fight. It is one of my favorite books ever by Games Workshop. It's a bolt-on rules book for 3rd edition and then also 4th edition. So it goes back to about 2001. But basically, it's the perfect time for Games Workshop terrain, where they're kind of building cardboard terrain. They have their own kits available, but they're still publicizing homemade terrain, and homemade terrain mixed in with Games Workshop terrain. And the terrain in this book is truly inspirational. If we just have a look at the next really picture.
Good. We've got some pictures of the terrain up here in front of us. Honestly, it looks as good as the terrain they're trying to fucking flog to you these days. It's all made out of bog roll and stuff. They're showing you how to do it.
Oh, this book is so good. So it's a bolt-on rules book. So there's actually there's a battle report in this, but there's a whole additional rule system in here. So there's additional rules for blowing through walls. So I think at the time, infantry
glory holding.
Yeah, infantry in the actual game.
You can glory hold the other team through the wall. Jesus.
Infantry only if you're Slanesh.
City fight, guys, pick it up today.
I think at the time in the game you couldn't go through walls, you had to go through doorways, but in this you can go through walls, you can put bombs on walls. There's rules where, because this goes back to when there was armor values, so it goes into how tanks of armored vehicles are slightly weaker in urban environments. So I've
just seen this vantage point rule on the page you're looking at, Matt, talking of the armor where you can shoot down onto the roof of a tank, and that's the real value. When old rules come back. That's in Kill Team. So if you're shooting down on people in Kill Team, they don't get cover.
Yeah, cool.
So like that, that's cool.
Yeah, so there's armor values for the top of a tank and the underneath of a tank. I've been wanting to talk about this book
That
for
terrain,
ages. It's
sorry,
fucking
you
amazing.
can't see this,
So
but
good.
this homemade terrain in this book is the best thing I've seen.
If you
Google this city fight.
Google Codex City Fight, but there's another book from 2008 when Games Workshop released some of the terrain sets we're a bit more familiar with in our local gaming store that you can play on. So pretty decent plastic kits. And in that book from 2008, Games Workshop are still mixing in cardboard and their kits. They're not doing this whole full-on propaganda of everything that they have. Everything that they produce has to be Games Workshop made. They were still mixing in homemade terrain. Homemade terrain is just amazing. It's just so good. So the 2008 copy, I think that's called Cities of Death, is also a very good book. The terrain is very good. It's just a bit more modern. But the reason I wanted to talk about this in this episode, when I first got this book, there was a link on the Games Workshop website where you could download Imperial propaganda posters. And these posters are still on my terrain that we play on. Because that's when I built the terrain, and we're looking at a picture where there's a proclamation poster, and then there's like your manufacturer labels, but there's lots of different, they were small propaganda posters. I tried desperately to find it online for this chat, just to see if I could find it anywhere. Can't find it anywhere. I can find chat rooms that are talking about it, people remembering that Games Workshop made this free to download website page. And there's a couple of versions, and on some of my terrain there's little posters, and there's it's just like Imperial Guardsmen like pointing at a poster and just silly stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I did. We've said it so many times when we've talked about White Dwarf and everything, that the plastic terrain is so expensive. It's so expensive to kit out an entire, well, it's not 6x4 anymore, but entire 40k board with their Gothic Ruins terrain. I know there's cheaper 3D printing stuff out there available now and stuff, but there's nothing cheaper than getting the polystyrene from a washing machine, covering it in a bit of grouting, and then spraying it black and dry brushing it grey, and you can do some really good jobs. And I wish Games Workshop would support that more.
Still to this day, when I unpackage something that has an interesting piece of polystyrene in it, I'm like, oh my god, maybe I should get back into making terrain.
My girlfriend, we have like polystyrene amnesties where there'll be a tidy up and it'll be just checking back in with me. Do you still need this bit? You've had it for 3 years. Well, I might use it. I've got this Armies on Parade idea for 4 years' time.
Yeah. It's like the size of the underneath of a washing machine, and like you've got like literally a fridge worth of packaging.
Under the protection of our freedoms, American labor, management, and capital, the greatest production team in the history of mankind, have made the United States the industrial master of the world. Capital must continue to provide industry with the funds to create new tools and plants. Labor and management must continue to increase the production of better goods at lower prices, so that more people will be able to buy the things that make life easier and happier for all of us.
This is the mark of a professional.
So the king of propaganda might not be Big Brother tucked away in his throne. It might be your friendly Games Workshop salesman. That's right. How does Games Workshop propagandize us? Why have we spent so much fucking money on Games Workshop? Answer me this. I didn't do it by my own free will. I know that. I went into Games Workshop not going to spend nothing. Before I knew it, propaganda, bam, came out penniless. So how have we been duped in the past by Games Workshop and their propaganda?
So many times.
Like it is, I don't know how, it's masterful. I don't even know that I've done it sometimes. I think all three of us have definitely woken up and forgotten we've bought something. Sometimes there's alcohol involved. In fact, most of the time that happens as alcohol involved. I know Drunk Stoney's made a few purchases in the past.
Every so often a new package arrives for Drunk Stoney to this day.
But I think for us three,
Drunk Stoney.
Oh yeah.
And it'd be good. I don't know anybody that got into 40k as an adult. So I guess we should start by saying that their biggest propaganda and marketing is advertising to children.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what do you class as an adult though? Because I mean, we all got back into it. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like. But I used to be into Transformers when I was a kid, and I haven't spent hundreds of fucking, probably definitely thousands of pounds on fucking Transformers. You know.
I think for me, it was the shop, and I think that's going to be the same for all of us. Is someone takes you into the shop, or you walk past the shop and see a window display as a kid, and you go, I have to go in here. And then once you're in the shop, it's the box art and the photography and the heavy metal paint jobs that just bring everything to life. I mean, it's even better now than it was when we were younger, but
it's kind of become the perfect storm. It always kind of was a little storm, but now with the lore so deep and rich as it is, so I know people that don't care about the game at all and just read the books, you know, people and then so you've got that whole thing going on with the models, and there are people who don't play the game and just paint the models, and there's you know, people that only play the game and just have a completely grey army and couldn't really give a shit. It's like a chore to have models for them, you know. So it caters for so many different kind of interests under this big umbrella. It's kind of the perfect hobby because it's creative, like to a point as much as you want it to be, and then it's also technical to as much as you want it to be, and also kind of whimsical and fanciful as to how far you want it to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've fallen into the trap of, and this is really, I mean, this is the brilliance. As you said, Stoney, it's the brilliance of the product, but we've fallen in the trap of, we have become the mouthpieces of Games Workshop's propaganda. Just the last 5 minutes, we've been saying how perfect the hobby is. Man. And, I mean, and
wheels within wheels.
Yeah, that's certainly how. I to this day, I just remember. I'm sure we're going to touch on the catalogue, but I was at school in year 7, had never heard of Games Workshop or Warhammer, and a new friend from a different school that we'd met had the catalogue, and we were flicking through in like a rainy day in the library, and it was like skeletons.
Yeah, but that's the catalogue.
Fuck. That's the catalogue, and that was it, man. I was like, wow, what is this?
But that's a major change, right? Like, definitely from today to then is also now is saturation, right? I mean, the catalogue days were you could, to see models, you could go to Games Workshop, which would be your nearest city. For me, was an hour's train ride to Cardiff. I could see some models in the shop, or you bought White Dwarf, or you had the Citadel Miniatures catalogue, and that was it. We had no internet. This is like finding pornos in a fucking bush before everyone had it on their phone.
Yeah,
there was nothing, and now you're saturated, and we're all advertising it because we're all posting to our Instagrams. And every time I wake up, I go on a social media and I see 20 models, and I think, I could do a better version of that, or I could convert that in that way. Oh, that's really inspiring.
Yeah,
we're all advertising to each other constantly, continuously.
Well, yeah, and even now with the TV shows and stuff coming as well, that's going to bring an even next level of people. Because my first introduction to Warhammer was exactly the same as you, Matt. Like going on the school bus, and there was always like older kids on the school bus, and they were always into like cool shit, which I didn't know about as a kid. And like I remember
cool shit like Warhammer.
This honestly, because this was like a game-changing White Dwarf that came out.
Oh, right.
That was like the one that everybody had, and it was the one where they just rebooted it to 2nd edition, and it was kind of like everybody had this fucking thing because it came with a free Space Marine that had all these different paint jobs on the inside and shit.
And I think that's kind of the interesting point, because you're right, Welshie, it's kind of saturated, but in a way, it still is kind of, Games Workshop can rely on word of mouth to a massive degree. I'm sure that goes on in schools still, even with the internet. A friend of a friend is into it, and somebody just looks at it and thinks like, that thing that looks cool. I'm in.
Well, I mean, we see it from the inside. It's saturated for us because we are through the looking glass. But it does always shock me that I would say 80-90% of people on the outside, when I say I play Warhammer, at least have some knowledge of what it is. And that to this day shocks me. I very rarely have to say it's a model based thing. People will know, oh, is that the thing where you make models? That might be because I know people that are on the fringe of being dweebs like us, but
I find that
it does shock me.
I find it's kind of the opposite for me. Like because I've tried to explain my model making to people in the past, and I find that for the most part, most people don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're like, I tried to make little men, and that's like Warhammer. It's a bit like and as soon as they don't know what Warhammer is, I'm like, it's like Dungeons and Dragons, and they're like, oh no, Stranger Things or whatever, and then you got like, like try to go from
There's
there.
There's definitely like starting ground, isn't there? Strange, it's a bit like Stranger Things. Or my other go-to is, Risk. Imagine that, but really big and fun.
Yeah, yeah. So I find it's kind of a split, but then when people know about it, they're like, "You're like, oh, do you know Warhammer?" And they're like, "Yeah, I know Warhammer." Like, like they don't have like thousands of pounds of Warhammer sat at home at their own shelf at home. That's when you know they've got that glint in their eye. And that's when you know, oh, okay, we're going to talk about Warhammer now.
I never find the problem being to explain about the models, but I find sometimes when I tell people that it's also a game.
Yeah, that I agree with like that 80-90% drops to about 20 when I try and explain rolling 60 dice at a time.
but I mean, it's just so interesting, it's so broad. I know so many people, like we touched on in the introduction, I know so many people who don't do the models but play the games. They play the computer games. It's so interesting how and some of those people have transferred to the models, and some of them haven't.
Vice versa. Books, Black Library in. The amount of people I know that read Black Library but have nothing else to do with it. It's But then there's also the nefarious, crafty things that Games Workshop do that we won't go too much into because they'll just depress us. But codex creep, making new units in a box good, Vashtor in a box set. Battle forces, and then trying to trick us at Christmas. What a great deal. You're saving all this money on plastic models when actually they don't cost us that much to make anyway.
But I mean,
but it's masterful, it's great, and we all love it. We all lube ourselves up and bend over to get fisted by the Battle Force box.
The game is the biggest propaganda of all of it because it's the least interesting part. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, lots of people love the game, but it's kind of like like you've got all these cool models that have all this cool lore, and you put them on the thing, and all that equates to is like roll these dice. It's a dice roll at the end of the day. All of it, all the lore, everything, all the cool sculpts comes down to a fucking dice roll at the end of the day.
I think I've said this in a long time ago in an episode, but it's like it is almost the perfect business model. It is. They've taken like an Airfix kit, so we have the creativity, we have the everything that gave people, and then you put that into a game that you continuously change and update, so it drives the sales of the kit, and it's just a self-fulfilling cycle. It's genius.
There's one thing they've never done in that business model that similar things do that I've always been so happy that they haven't delved down to. You get it sometimes, in that some things can be difficult to get hold of, but the pay to win aspect, granted, you can go out and buy if you've got endless income, you can buy lots of new kits very quickly, fine. But the limited run stuff that you get with things like Magic the Gathering, where if you've got the most money, you've got the best cards, that is not a thing in 40k, and I think that's great. That the points leveling system and that are what.
Well, I mean, it is kind of like you say with codex creep. Like, to be fair, if you wanted to buy the best new 40k army,
you're going to get nerfed back down, and
that's not then you just wait and buy the next one. That would,
but then you've got to paint it, or you've got to pay. Okay, so if you've got enough to buy stuff quickly and commission people to paint it quickly,
if you were a Warhammer guy and you bought every new army when it came out and got it commission painted, it would still cost less money than it would to buy the most expensive Magic the Gathering cards every time. So
in terms of total cost,
but hang on, because
there's no gambling though. You're not buying a pack of unknown stuff. I do think there's a difference.
I agree with elements of both of what you're saying, and I'm going to sit in the middle because actually I think that we could have had this conversation 2, maybe 3 years ago, and Games Workshop were definitely going into a path of buying what was like the FOMO of releasing stuff and only making it once short issue, like short runs and stuff that would be selling. And some, they still do limited edition stuff, but they used to do it more for model kits. And actually they have actually reacted to how the community have reacted to that. And they have stopped doing that. Like Vastor is in a kit, but we know it's going to be in a separate kit in 6 months.
What's interesting about the models
it's not limited run.
You don't necessarily have to be interested in the rules to buy the models. You know, like no one's buying a Magic card because they like the art on it. They're buying it. You know, it's not like you know. I would quite happily, like we've talked about the Avatar of Kane or something. I would be quite happy to own that model and paint it up and build it as a kit. It looks really fucking cool and fun to paint, you know, but like have no interest in buying an Eldar army, you know.
I think the biggest example I think of them actually still showing they care about this kind of stuff was the guard box. Because yes, you could buy that guard box limited run early and get all those units, but they refused to support it at major tournaments until the codex was released fully in January. And that's something, you know, I think they didn't have to do that. They could have said, okay, from tomorrow, if everyone buys this box, you can turn up with all your Lehman Russes and win a tournament. But they said, no, wait until it's available to everyone. That, you know.
But I mean, that's just it. It's like, do you think people would buy the models if the game didn't exist?
No.
Do you think that,
no.
I mean, do you think that like people would? I mean, do you think that the game has to exist for the models to? Because it's like you need an excuse to buy the models in a way, or is it like?
Oh, so when you were just saying about buying the Avatar of Kane model, there's loads of stuff on this podcast, and there's you know, I see a model and I think that model is really good. Like Helbrecht. That model is amazing. I fucking love that model. He's been out for like nearly 2 years. I haven't bought him because I don't play Black Templars. So that is the thing. The Rogel Dawn tank is kind of okay, but I've always played the guard and I like to have the guard models. Am I going to buy the kit? Yeah, I'm going to buy the kit and I'm probably going to use it in a game. Am I going to buy, I don't know, some other guard thing? Yeah, because I'm going to use it. New AdMech? Yeah, because I'm going to use it.
For me, it comes down to the unit type, right? I would never, ever, despite how good the next incarnation of Hormagaunts is, I would never buy a box of 20 Hormagaunts because I wanted to paint it.
No,
right? But I would buy the Parasite of Mortrex regardless of whether I was going to actually use it for more than one game or not.
Okay.
Like, it definitely comes down to
absolutely.
that.
That is a good point. So maybe there's a difference in the model design as well. Is they you know, Games Workshop obviously know, okay, right, we're doing Hormagaunts. We've got to make these fuckers easy to paint. You've got to dry brush these cunts.
But I think
people are going to buy fucking thousands.
They're falling foul of that a lot more than they are recently, and 3D printing is only going to make it worse because the thing that they will always have, well, maybe not always, but currently still do have over 3D printing is intricacy of the models they can make. So their response to 3D printing will be to make more intricate models. And as they make more intricate models, people are going to want to paint them less, especially in big batch units. And that's definitely something. And the terrain, I love this indoor Garrow Dark into the dark board in actions terrain, but I'm never going to paint it properly. There's just too many details on it. I just don't want it. Just give me straight bulkheads like Space Hulk. You know, that's fine. I can cope with that.
I did want to touch on the catalogue because like I mentioned about my first experience with the Games Workshop catalogue at school, but I remember even at the time, only Games Workshop would charge like £5 or £10 to buy their catalogue every year, that they'd have a yearly catalogue come out that you'd have to buy and they'd advertise it in White Dwarf, like, hey, buy our 2004 catalogue for £10, which at the time would have bought you like a character model.
I stopped buying White Dwarf when it went up to £2 a copy. I was like, that's extravagant. How could I ever afford that?
But I've since, I mean, it's crazy. I can't quite believe that I've actually bought two 2001 and a 2005 Games Workshop catalog off eBay a couple of years ago.
Just for nostalgia.
and to look at some of the ranges that I'm trying to collect. But actually, to some degree, the internet is brilliant for doing stuff like that. But sometimes you also can't beat having the catalog at the time.
That's how much Warhammer's got us, right?
Crazy.
Me and you are sat here, both with our own individual plans to try and buy 20-year-old lead models that we can't even use in the game anymore. So I think we're well and truly on the propaganda wagon.
That's it.
It's
whatever they've got so many different angles to bite you with, to get their little teeth into you with, and they're going to be even more. This Amazon deal is going to be even more and more little ways to like get that initial little nibble on you, and then before you know it, you're a 40k fan.
Did anyone? This is something I remembered when we were talking earlier, and it was funny that you spoke about the towel, because I remember, and did this happen to either of you, where like my mum would go into Games Workshop to buy me a birthday present or a Christmas present, and I'd get that for birthday or for Christmas, but I'd also get a card that would be like from the Games Workshop manager, like, hey, come in and play a game from Tim. And I remember they were like it was when the Tau first came out, so they had they were Tau cards.
And
I mean,
but I mean that's something that also
sounds like you were being groomed by the runner of your local.
We were being groomed by Games Workshop.
We were saying that we're doing their advertising for them on this podcast right now. We're doing it on our Instagram, on our Twitter, on our socials. Follow us on all of them, like and subscribe, etc. Not only that, but they've now subsidized people teaching people how to play the game. Because there was a time where if you wanted to learn how to play Warhammer, you had to go into a Games Workshop that had 2 or 3 members of staff who would teach you how to play. I don't remember the last time I went into Games Workshop in where we live in Brighton and saw people playing a game. That's done by the Dice Saloon, by gaming cafes that have opened up all over the country. They're not even teaching people the game anymore. I'm sure there are some Games Workshops that do a great job at doing that. But
I went into a Games Workshop recently to buy some paint, and it was quite quiet, and the guy got chatting with me and whatnot. And I was saying, I don't play that much, but I said to him, but I'm quite interested in learning how to play again, whatever. And he was like, bring your models in and we can like play some games here or whatever. And I was thinking, but I said to him, like, have you got any models here? Could we like do a little, like a little 500 points or something now or whatever? And he was like, no, I don't have the models here to play the game. So they literally didn't have the armies. People literally had to. But I swear I remember old Games Workshops having store armies where you'd come in and kids would like do a little. They always used to have that little painting table on the end of the things where people would come and sit there and do some painting, and all the shitty models that they'd been painting be a part of some weird bodged together army, and then show you how to play with it. But
I hope they never go, because I love that they're still on the high street. But I do genuinely think that Games Workshops now are just for mums and aunties at Christmas to pick up stuff for their kids and nieces and nephews.
But I mean, look at
every other role has been fulfilled by the community, and that's clever in and of itself.
Yeah, like even a lot of its recruitment, like when James Swallows and stuff, we did an interview with him. He was talking about how Black Library still put out like an open call to people, and they will kind of nurture you through or whatever. And like that is still something that they do. So I think that is a really cool thing.
Well, and the recent last few years, Games Workshop sending all their kits out to all the YouTubers and stuff, like a week or 2 weeks before release dates, and people doing all the previews on codices before they come out. And their whole marketing budget's mostly just spent on them sending out free box sets to loads of people, and they could just rely on the community doing most of the work for them. I think they're going to stick around in the high street, and I also I quite like the fact that they're still there. I mean, I guess if it's the nearest place to you, it still kind of makes sense to go in and get like that paint that you need desperately. And
we're well and truly on board, aren't we? And their propaganda has won, and it's better than any of the in-universe things that we've spoken about, because we're all 30 plus and still talking about something we started as 12-year-olds. So well done, GW propaganda. You win.
having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently they dance, innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors. Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell.
Get into Games Workshop today and discover a world of interaction and creativity.
In this film, you will see the ease with which this vicious plant can be grown in your neighbor's yard.
World of interaction and creativity.
Let's finish off this advert then, shall we, boys? We've got our mascot, a lobotomized monkey, and his lobotomist friend, and they need an advert, a bit like the one that we saw earlier on, right? So let's, if there's one thing a good advert needs, it's a good jingle. You know what I mean? Something like that. So what we need to do is we need to get a theme tune. So I want to get a bit of a flavor as to what kind of theme tune are we going to have for our lobotomized monkey and his lobotomist friend. So why don't we start with...
Okay, I get the gist. Yeah.
This is I'd say...
This is more your kind of a, hey, mister, are you home from the war? Do you need something to protect yourself?
Too uplifting. From the very start of our advertising premise, I've gone grim dark, and this is just too much.
So that's the propaganda element, though, isn't it? Is like, it doesn't matter if it's grim dark on the other side. You've got to lull the mums into buying the warhammer for the kids.
Maybe for the mums, if you had like a mums open day, but I want kids in the door that have no friends, that want to sit inside, that are wearing too much eye makeup. Maybe they've got greasy hair and an Iron Maiden t-shirt on. This isn't going to draw them in.
It's interesting that I was going to say, it reminds me of like, what's that makeup that they sold in America in like the 60s? The Avon girl. You know what I'm on about?
Yeah, where they used to do like parties where they go around and try to flog you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So maybe this could be a tune for the mums. You know, like, hey, mum, is your kid sitting around whacking it 7 times a day? Well, then why don't you get them into Warhammer? Idle hands makes work for the devil.
Start them off with a bowl of cornflakes and then get them a paintbrush.
After a while, little Jimmy won't need milk on them cornflakes. He'll be pouring paint water on them. Look at him go. Yeah, cool. So we've got that. We could go that direction. Or maybe we could go with something a little bit like this.
And this is like...
this is
a little bit lower. This is a classic. This is more like this is just people having a happy time. This is what you need behind people playing the game. You know, you need at least 75% 14-year-old girls to 14-year-old boys, and you need this, and then you need to just finish it with someone rolling like 10 sixes.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a comedic element, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you know, someone, like you say, someone's going to be mischievous and then roll.
No, there's loads of people playing at a tournament, and then it flies over like the camera does on a football pitch to this music, and then it stops above the one table where there's the one guy who's like looking through the rule book, flicking through his codex, and they're having like an argument as the comedic music in the background. They're like, no. Yeah, it's not really an advert.
Okay, I get it. It might be like kind of a like, life's too short to argue about rules.
Yeah. The positive like comes over and goes, in instances like this, we like to just do a 1 to 3 or 4 to 6.
The most important rule. It's an advert for the most important rule.
Yeah, it's like a good sportsmanship type one. It doesn't show. It doesn't show the guy freaking out and flipping tables and stuff. It's just
I feel like this would be more suited to a like fair play primer at a tournament morning. Like you play this before everyone starts. Before we start the tournament, let's just watch this friendly video. The guy opposite him flicking through the books is just like, no.
Just points to the dice in silence, and they roll for it and just shake hands.
Well, let's not forget we've got our lobotomized monkey and lobotomist.
Maybe he does it.
Mascot. Well, that's it. Maybe we can have the lobotomized monkey going crazy. He's starting to freak out, starting pooping in his own hand to throw it at the guy, and the lobotomist comes in and is like, now, young snuggles the lobotomized monkey. Surely it's time to display good sportsmanship in a situation.
Yeah, that's what that one's for then. It's not quite what we want for our advert, but it definitely has a place in the world of Warhammer.
That's it. It's another pitch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Let's try the first one. George Roney, Night City.
I like this one.
This is cool, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's got
great.
2 a.m. 2 a.m. drunk Matt all over it.
For sure, this is do you want to meet local Games Workshop players in your area? Call right now.
Yeah.
Are you looking for sweaty, hairy men to play games of Warhammer with right now?
Is this the kind of thing you're listening to when you make late night Warhammer purchases? Yeah, I love it, and I think it has a place, but I feel like this is. Do you remember the nights where we used to go to what we ceremoniously called the Warhammer Mansion and be playing until like 5 a.m? This would get us through the final game, but I don't think it promotes the hobby.
No, you're right. This is after hours. This is when the mums have gone to bed and you're advertising to the kids that have stayed up too late.
This is what the guys that are working in Games Workshop put on at the end of the day when they roll out their secret armies that they've told people like you they don't have hidden behind the counter.
When you said rolled out their armies, I was imagining like an entire army stuck to like a carpet, so they actually just literally just throw it and it just all kind of unrolls. A whole army.
It's a huge aluminium sheet and they're all magnetized perfectly.
Yeah. It's so 1930s. It's like, how did they used to speak on 1930s?
Well, now, boys and girls.
That's it, yeah.
Have you seen Warhammer? It's the new plastic craze the kids are going absolutely crazy for. Come in and spend your money and you'll never be unhappy. Once you get hooked, you'll be playing for upwards of 2 decades. If you're lucky, you'll be recording a podcast on a weekly basis about your past life in Warhammer. Never get down with Games Workshop.
Models now made from genuine lead, so feel free to suck on them for strength. You're probably used to wielding a hammer in your day-to-day life as a rock crusher, 5-year-old boy. Well, don't worry, because now you can get into Warhammer, the lead-based game for sucking on delicious treats and paintable models.
I think this, for me, that's the winner.
That's the one? You reckon we can get a Jacaro and a lobotomist in front of that going on about Warhammer and convince kids to get into the game?
I can see the Jacaro trying to explain that he's had a really good day playing Warhammer, but because he's been lobotomized, being unable, and the lobotomist scientist, he comes in and he plugs something else into his brain, and suddenly the lobotomized monkey starts talking like we just were, and explaining why it's a great thing to do, and everyone's hooked.
His features would never be normal again.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lords of Law quiz, the last part of the show where I like to pit Matt and Welshie against each other in a really cool, extreme quiz. You guys love the Lords of Law quiz, right?
Yeah, can't wait.
You guys have come to love it. It's been the best part of the show. You guys know it as the best part of the show, and that brings me on to today's subject, which is ladders. What is the best ladder in Warhammer 40k?
Matt, have you noticed this has just literally gone downhill?
Yeah.
I've got A, B, and C, best ladders. You guys ready?
Outrageous. No, I don't think so. And obviously it's the Uruk-hai ladders from Lord of the Rings for mounting Helm's Deep. So there's not even any point in doing it.
That's a great answer, Welshie. That's probably the best ladder Games Workshop have ever made. Yeah.
I've got a little quiz where we can even blow our own trumpet a little bit, because we're coming up to some milestones in subscribers and streams. So I thought I could sweep in and steal Stoney's thunder while he's trying to sell us ladders and give you guys a few questions about our listenership in general.
Ooh, sounds tantalizing. Yeah. What kind of ladders do they like to use? I've got some answers right now. Worth 1,000 billion points. Who's ready for what ladders do the listeners use? Quiz?
Outrageous. Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions based on our Spotify data. Okay.
Ooh,
so everything I'm going to ask you is based on Spotify. I would like you to tell me, out of these 3 of our most listened to Spotify episodes of all time, What is the top most listened to episode? Your 3 options are episode 60, the Angron Deep Dive, episode 49, Istvan 3, or episode 45, Just Say No to Chaos. That's the Angron Special, Istvan 3, or Just Say No to Chaos.
Oh, I think I might go with the Angron one. I don't think it's the second one you said, but I think it could be I don't think it's Istvan.
I mean, I can think of a reason why any of those might be popular. So I will go so that I don't say the same answer, because Angron is a good guess. So I will go for Istvan.
I'm afraid you're both wrong. It's just
No way! No way!
People need to know. The people need to know.
That's our most popular episode.
It's our most listened to episode on Spotify.
Yeah, not necessarily most popular.
Yeah, everyone listened to it, hated it. Taking a period of 3 weeks after the episode was released, who gave us the biggest boost in followers? Was it Gav Thorpe's episode or James Swallow's?
James Swallow.
Oh, I'm going to go with the Thorpester then.
It was the Thorpester. If you extend the period, Swallow brings in the crowd, but Thorpe was straight out the gates. Big old boost to our followers. Can you tell me, we've joked about it on the episode already today, to the closest, well, whoever's closest, what percentage of our Spotify listeners are female?
Oh,
15.
I'm going to go way less. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We've already talked. Welshie, you said you were in Warhammer World the other day and you didn't see a woman in there.
No, so, none in 60 odd people.
I'm going to go like 3%, 4%, 2%.
Point there to Stoney, 5%.
No!
Oh! And if you are that 5% of female listeners, thank you for listening to us. And tell as many of your friends, be they female, male, or non-binary. Shame! Can you tell me, out of the following age ranges, which age range we are most listened to by? I think that makes sense as a question. So your options are 23 to 27, 28 to 34, 35 to 44, or 45 to 59.
I'm going to go B.
B, 28 to 34, says Matt.
Yeah.
I'm going to go surprise extra answer, 69.
Whoa.
Well, if that is your serious answer, Stoney, I'm going to be disappointed because you're not taking it as serious as I do on Lords of Law, and I feel very let down. But I will accept it. You're both wrong anyway. It's 35 to 44. So we are 28 to 34 is 30% of people. So if you're in that age range, thank you for listening. Don't grow too old too quickly. And 35 to 44 is our highest at 40%.
And if you are 69 out there listening, big up to you.
Well, Stoney, there's a chance because we've got 1.5% of people between 60 and 150.
Hell
if there's anyone over 100 listening.
They're too busy 69, and as soon as you hit age 69, all you do, you get a year of 69.
Okay, a few more questions to go. So this is my favourite of the stats that you get from the Spotify for podcasters. And I'm going to leave this quite open, but I might give you a clue. I'll give you one guess each, and then I'll give you a clue. So I would like to know, can you name me any of the artists they're listening to? So these are our followers. What artists are they listening to on Spotify? An easy clue to start with. They would all be rock or rock subgenres.
I'm going to say...
I'm saying Limp Bizkit. It's got to be. It's got to have some biscuit heads.
Okay.
Corn,
Stoney's
maybe.
I was thinking Korn or Rammstein. I'll go Rammstein.
Oh, you're going Rammstein. Okay, I can tell you that you're both. Neither of those are in our top 5, but you're both in the very correct ballpark. So I'll give you one more guess each. Matt,
I'm trying to think of who it could be instead of Limp Bizkit.
I can just see Matt only thinking of like Imperial Guard drumming in his head. Like.
I can't stop. I keep thinking about Iron Maiden. Because I know Welsh, you mentioned it before.
What about Slipknot?
Ah,
yeah.
Matt, I'm gonna have to push you.
Oh, what's the band that Corey Taylor's been in as well as Slipknot? Then
Stone Sour.
Stone Sour. Oh no, they're not.
You're gonna play Stone Sour?
No, I'm not.
Come on.
Not.
Was Stone? Is it not? Is he in Stone Sour?
Yeah,
I don't know, that might be,
yeah,
they're weak ass band. Don't listen to them. If you're a listener out there and you're listening to our podcast and you're listening to Stone Sour, unsubscribe.
I don't know. I'll say Maiden.
What about ICP? I've done some ICP love in this.
Here we go, because this is a point to one of you.
Ooh.
I did say new metal, so well done, Stoney. Slipknot is in our top 5 artists they're listening to.
Booyah.
The other ones, Metallica at the top, System of a Down, Tool, and The
I was going to say Tool as a joke.
The Offspring.
No.
Tool and The Offspring. So if you're listening to this and you're fans of any of them, I am fans of all of them too. You're in good company. Thank you. Our top 5 countries most listened to. So shout outs to anybody in any of these countries, and indeed any country if you're listening. Can you put the top 5 countries in order? Canada, Australia, United States, Denmark, UK. You can do this as a team.
Whoa.
Oh, UK's top.
UK's top, yeah. Then I think USA. If the SoundCloud, the 16 people
Denmark?
that listen to us on SoundCloud are anything to go by.
Denmark was one of them, yeah.
And Canada. I reckon maybe Canada third, then Denmark, then Australia, I reckon.
Happy with that, Matt?
Yeah, Canada third, yeah.
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 Then Denmark, then Australia. Australia fifth.
I'd say Australia 4th, Denmark 5th.
I think those two could change round. I'd be all right. Well, let's go Denmark 5th, Australia 4th then.
Okay, you guys are very close. There's only one switch in it. So top UK, shout out to our fellow brethren in the UK.
Our fellow UKers.
Almost exactly the same number of listens from the people in the US. So if you're listening to us in the US, that's you, Jesse. That's you, Case Co. I believe both of you US. You need to tell your friends. You're slightly behind the UK.
And the guy who keeps listening from Beaver Falls, big up yourself on SoundCloud.
Shout out
Beaver Falls.
Third place are our friends down under, fellow English speaking Australians. So they come in about a third of the listeners comparative to the US or the UK or Australians. So spread the word. I know it's difficult across your humongous country, but thank you for listening. And then
Crack
Canada
a Foster's and tell a spider about the LBP podcast. Please don't unsubscribe because of my horrible accent.
shoot out to Canada in 4th. And then Denmark, of all places, got to be the most per head of population in 5th position. So thank you to all you guys. And then also thank you to Ireland, Brazil, Sweden, Germany, Norway for listening from there, all in the top 10. So my last question
has it got this
guys,
bad? Are we shouting out entire countries now? We've got that few listeners. We should shout out any country that listens to
Ireland. Thank you.
Okay, so my last question to you guys then, to steal from a very popular UK TV show that is pointless. I want you to name me one of the countries on our list where we have had one complete stream of an episode. Just one. So someone's listened to an episode and gone, nah, not for me.
Not for me. I speak whatever language of the country that this is. I can't even understand that.
Afghanistan.
Matt's going Afghanistan.
Sri Lanka.
I'm afraid you're both wrong, but geographically, you can have one more guess. Yeah, right. Geographically, from those two, Stoney is closer to one of the countries.
Oh, I couldn't even point at Sri Lanka on a map, so that didn't really help me. Botswana,
Malaysia.
Oh, and it's worth 15 million points. Matt gets it with Malaysia.
God damn it. Classic Lords of Law.
Yeah.
Indonesia, Mexico, South Africa, Switzerland, Hungary, Argentina, Colombia, Serbia, Slovakia, Morocco, Austria, Iceland, Portugal, Malaysia.
Well, listen, world, if you are listening to this for the first time in whatever country, hopefully you'll tune back in. If not, this has been the Large Blast podcast. Matt, winner of Lords of Law. We'll see you all next time. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.